Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, more jobs open up in the NFL, and the Raiders coaches are getting some love around the NFL. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, January 11th, 2024.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, you're checking us out on YouTube. Thank you very much. We appreciate that, and we appreciate my man Ari. He does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good. So shout out to my guy Ari. Does a fantastic job. You can hit him up on Twitter at Ari Producers. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line at 707-654-4693. And even though it's the offseason, we still go full throttle, right? Of course, the offseason is going to be very exciting for the Raiders. What are they going to do with the GM? What are they going to do with the head coach? What are they going to do with the offensive coaches, the play callers? What are they going to do with some defensive coaches? There's going to be a lot of change going on with the Silver and Black this offseason, and we'll be here for it every step of the way. And, of course, the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line in segment number 3. We'll get all your calls, all your texts, as many as possible, coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, and, it's funny, we've been talking about Antonio Pierce quite a bit, and, I make no mistakes about it. I make no bones about it. I let it be known that I feel like he could do a really good job with the Raiders, and I hope that he does get the job. I've made it be known that if they go with Jim Harbaugh, and I do believe it comes down to those two guys, I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that. But I do believe that there's a misconception out there about Antonio Pierce, and the reason I believe this is because I was receiving multiple tweets on Wednesday about this misconception, and I really believe that it's a narrative that some in Raider Nation really believe, and I'd like to tell you I don't believe it. We'll talk about it in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always have. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, and we'll do it as soon as we tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. And off top, talking about Antonio Pierce, he's getting attention from the outside. First, it was already known that the Giants, the New York Giants, obviously he played for the Giants. He won a Super Bowl ring with the Giants, had interest in Antonio Pierce as their defensive coordinator if he didn't get the job with the Raiders. And I thought that was very reasonable. I thought that made a lot of sense. On Wednesday, it became official that Wink Martindale, who was the current defensive coordinator in New York with the Giants, they decided to mutually part ways. It was something that we believed starting on Monday that was going to happen. It was already reported, but, they had to, I'm sure, work out some kind of settlement as far as money goes, and they decided to go their separate ways. So now in New York with the Giants, they actually do have an opening at the defensive coordinator position. I talked to Patricia Traina on my radio show on Wednesday about that, and she let it be known that, yes, the Giants would definitely love to have Antonio Pierce back in the building as their defensive coordinator. That made sense to me. That's not something that I thought was a big surprise. That was not something that I did not see coming. Knew that was going to happen. But Ian Rappaport from NFL Network, he actually tweeted out on Wednesday that the Titans have requested to interview Raiders interim coach Antonio Pierce for their vacant head coaching job. Las Vegas may have some competition. Again, that's according to Rap Sheet. And it's funny, anytime I see stuff like that, I like to tweet it out and just say, hey, update on Pierce or update on Graham or Raiders or roster moves or whatever like that. I don't claim to be an insider. I just pass information on. When I see it, I pass it on and try to, let Raider Nation see as much as possible. So a lot of the tweets that I saw that followed it said, oh, Rooney Rule, Rooney Rule, Rooney Rule. And this is not even the misconception that I'm talking about. I don't think that there's anything that says Antonio Pierce is going to interview anywhere just to check a box for the Rooney Rule. And anyone who's listened to me for a long time knows that I'm not a fan of the Rooney Rule for that exact reason, right? A black person, a person of color, or a woman gets an interview, and it's like, oh, she's satisfying the Rooney Rule. Oh, he's satisfying the Rooney Rule. And I don't think that's fair. I think that that's terrible. I would hate to be that guy. I really would. I'd hate to be a guy that ever felt like I was going into an interview just to check a box. And I think with what Antonio Pierce was able to do in the 9 games that he coached for the Raiders, going 5-4, going into the belly of the beast that is the Kansas City Chiefs, knocking out the Chargers, getting their head coach fired, and Brandon Staley putting up 63 points at the house, finished off the season against the Denver Broncos the way that he did. I don't think there's anything that he did that says, oh, this is just going to be a check-the-box interview. I think that that's really disrespectful. I understand where some people could come from just because they'll look at it from the surface and be like, oh, he's just checking the Rooney Rule. And so I responded to a couple people and I said, or maybe he just earned the interview. Well, yeah, but they're not going to hire him. That's fine. They might not hire him, right? The Raiders are bringing in a lot of different people from the GM position. They're going to bring in others from the head coaching position, and I believe it's a two-man race. I believe it comes down to Pierce and it comes down to Harbaugh. But I just don't think – I think it's lazy just to go ahead and say, oh, Pierce is just checking a box for the Rooney Rule. I don't like that, and I think that he's earned more than that. And I do believe that the outside teams – and that's why every time someone's on my radio show and talks about Antonio Pierce, or I talk to a Chris Canty, or I talk to a LeVar Arrington, or I talk to a Brandon Jacobs, or I talk to anybody like John McClain that you heard on this show on Wednesday's podcast. They're talking about Antonio Pierce. And John McClain himself, I can run it back, right? He said if Mark Davis doesn't hire him, he's going to be a head coach in the National Football League sooner rather than later. That's not to check a box, right? So that aggravates me when I hear it. Like I said, I understand why it's the first thought that a lot of people have, but Antonio Pierce has done everything the right way and has shown that he could be a leader of men, and a lot of teams need that leader of men. Look at the Lions. Look at the Houston Texans, right? Look at the Tennessee Titans when they still had Mike Vrabel, right? Found out on Wednesday that Pete Carroll was out in Seattle after 14 seasons there. He's out. He's getting an advisory role, which I think is BS, but okay. We'll see. I think he'll be coaching somewhere else. But there are coaches that are big-time leaders and surround themselves with some really good coaches. And, oh, by the way, Antonio Pierce knows the game of football. He might be inexperienced as far as an NFL head coach. He's not inexperienced when it comes to the NFL. So that was just one of the pieces of news that rolled out. But there you go, the Tennessee Titans showing a little bit of love. Will they hire him as the head coach? I think in his heart he wants to be the Raiders head coach anyway. So even if Tennessee were to offer it to him, I think he'd give the Raiders the opportunity to go ahead and match it. But just to see that other teams are at least, reaching out to check in on him to see what's going on. And, of course, I know his agent's out there also pushing his name, as he should. That's his job. But for these guys to want to at least sit down and talk with them, I think that tells you a lot more about the man, Antonio Pierce, and the coach, and what people are seeing on the outside. Also, a couple more nuggets that I have for you when it comes to coaches and GMs. The Raiders interviewed Kelly Klein Van Callaghan for their open GM role. That was on Wednesday, and she comes from the Denver Broncos. She's a Broncos executive director of football operations, special advisor to the general manager, and joined the organization with George Payton in 2021. Kelly Klein Van Callaghan is the first known Broncos executive to interview for an open GM role in the NFL this year. She is viewed as a rising star in the player personnel world. Again, somebody who has earned the opportunity to interview for potential openings in the National Football League. I don't look at her either as a Rooney Rule. I look at her as someone that's well-respected across the National Football League and is getting her chance to at least interview and potentially land a job somewhere in the front office with either the Broncos or another team. Well, the Raiders interviewed her as of Wednesday, so there's an update on that right there. Also, Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator Patrick Graham. We know that the Chargers already reached out and want to interview him for the head coaching position, so that's a feather in the cap, and that's something that I believe he earned as the Raiders had the number 6 ranked defense in the league. He also had interviewed for the Vikings coaching job before he got signed up and hired with the Raiders. He also interviewed for the G-Men's job before Brian Daboll got the job. So he hasn't got the jobs yet, but he is interviewing. And again, by what he was able to do, get that unit turned around, number 6 ranked defense in the league, earned that opportunity. Well, another team reached out to him and requested an interview to be the defensive coordinator. The Raiders blocked that. So the Raiders, according to Ian Rappaport, the Raiders will allow the new head coach a decision on inherited staff members. He can interview with the Chargers. The Raiders can't block that one because that's a head coach and that's a move up. That's a step up, not a lateral move. So there's that. Also, the Giants, speaking of the G-Men, they're interviewing Raiders offensive line coach Carmen Brasillo for the same role on Brian Daboll's coaching staff. The Raiders granted permission for Brasillo to interview. So while they conduct their GM and head coaches searches. So, and that was from Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network. So there you go. Offensive line coach Carmen Brasillo interviewing with the G-men. Patrick Graham most likely will interview with the Chargers for the head coaching position. Also was requested for defensive coordinator. They blocked that. And we're finding out about Antonio Pierce getting some love from the Titans and also getting some love from the Giants. I'll say this, just so you know that these are not just token interviews and just, oh, well, we're going to do this to check boxes and this, that, and the other. When was the last time we could say multiple coaches on a staff of the Raiders were getting interviewed outside of the Raiders? Right? I mean, even Rich Bisaccia, who did a really good job with going through everything he had to go through with the Raiders when he took over as the interim head coach. I mean, he got, one interview, I think, after he left the Raiders, after the Raiders decided to move on and make the move to Josh McDaniels. I believe he got one interview. It might have been, was it with Detroit? It wasn't Detroit. I can't remember what team it was, but it was one team that I remember he interviewed with, and that was it. And then ended up in Green Bay as a special teams coordinator, which he's been a special teams coordinator his whole career. So it's very rare that multiple coaches on the Raiders coaching staff are getting interviews, but you're seeing as they've already allowed their coaches to go out there and interview with other teams if they want to, but they got to keep them in the loop. So similar to Patrick Graham when they said, no, you can't make that lateral move. You can't interview for that, but you can interview for a head coaching job because obviously that's a step in the right direction. So there you go. The Raiders have been casting their net wide and trying to bring in a lot of different people and pick their brains and hear what they've got to say. And the Raiders coaches are also getting that love like Champ Kelly from the Carolina Panthers. But that's all the news and notes I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. That wasn't even the misconception about Antonio Pierce. What is the misconception of Antonio Pierce? We'll talk about it. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. And we'll get to that after we tell you about BetterHelp. And today's show is being brought to you in part by BetterHelp. And, this time of year, especially around the New Year's or really any time of year, if you got something that is on your mind, if you have to make a big life decision, if you're, around the time of year, like New Year's when you want to have family and friends around you, and maybe you just don't have that family and friends around you for one reason or the other, and you're just kind of going through some things, right? And a lot of times, even around the New Year's, right, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves, right? Instead of expanding on what we already doing right, we try to change. We try to come up with New Year's resolutions. Well, that's not always the best way to go. Therapy can help you find your strengths. You could ditch those extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. If you're thinking of starting therapy, you should give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Well, what do you got to do? Celebrate the progress that you've already made by visiting BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into what I believe is the biggest misconception about Antonio Pierce. I think that it should be really acknowledged that he's a hell of a football coach, right? Regardless of if he's your style or not, that doesn't have to be your style. You don't have to say, well, that's the kind of coach that I want to coach my favorite team. You don't have to be in agreement with that. But I think anyone who's reasonable can look back and say, yeah, there was a lot of good that was done with the Raiders after he took over as the interim coach. I think anyone who's reasonable and open-minded could say that. But what I realized and what I've learned is that everyone's not open-minded. Everyone's not willing to say that. And there's a misconception that because he yells Raiders and, lets the players smoke cigars in the locker room and shoot hoops in the locker room and be themselves and be what they call as a player's coach and, this, that, and the other. And, wears Air Force Ones, is from Compton, rides a lowrider, this, that, and the other, right? That's the only reason why Raider Nation likes him. And that's the only reason why Raider Nation wants him to be the head coach. Hell, that's the only reason I want him to be the head coach, right? Because we have fun. We talk about dominoes in the hallway. We do this, that, and the other. So that's why I want him as the head coach, because he just seems to be a Raider where he's really not a head coach. And I think that is the biggest misconception. I really think that that's just looking at him from a surface and looking for a reason not to like him. And it's funny. I don't know if some members of Raider Nation are so just kind of shell-shocked or have PTSD from all the bad years of of, bad coaches and everything that's gone on. And look, I know PTSD is a major, major thing, but you understand what I'm saying. That when I say that, I'm talking about it's just kind of, you're just kind of used to not being able to have good things, and just even looking at it, it's like, that can't be right. That's got to be off. Whatever the case may be, however you want to word it, it's just one of those things where it's like, this can't be real, right? What I'm seeing can't be right. You're just kind of like once bitten, twice shy. I guess that's probably the best way to put it. But when I look at Antonio Pierce, and I talked about this on my radio show on Wednesday, because, again, I was going back and forth on Twitter, and I love respectful conversation, but there comes a point where you realize that it doesn't matter what you say, the conversation is not going to matter, right? Because it's already made up in their minds that this guy is not a good guy. This guy is not going to be a good coach. This guy is going to set the Raiders back, right? Again, I feel like two things could be true. Jim Harbaugh could be a great coach. He is a great coach. I also think Antonio Pierce has an opportunity to be a great coach, and I think he's a good coach right now. And you don't have to jump through hoops to get him. You don't have to give him all the power to get him. You don't have to give him 10 years, $125 million to get him. You don't have to change your whole everything to land him, right? You don't have to do all that. He's already there in front of you. He wants the job. He's proven that he'll take the job on, even in the worst scenario, the worst case scenario, which is what he did, week 9 when he got the job, November 1st. And what did he do? Let me just go ahead and give you a couple things that he did. One, first and foremost, the most important thing, change the culture, right? I mean, we talk about the Patriot way that was around the Raiders until Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler got fired. And even though, I wasn't talking about it as the Patriots way, it was still, you felt like, okay, it's whatever they were doing in New England. Well, he got back doing the things the Raiders way, and that doesn't mean, being a undisciplined team and getting a bunch of crazy penalties and, just being bullies. No, but it was just doing things the right way. Tough, absolutely. Physical, absolutely. But smart and disciplined, right? Not to mention, he held players accountable, right? I mean, one of the things that everyone said, all the players in the locker room, even Jimmy G when we met with him on Monday, he's a straight shooter. He'll tell you what it is, right? If good, bad, ugly, he'll tell it to you, and that's all you can ask for from a player's point of view. Accountability, like Marcus Peters, right? I mean, he signed with the team. You thought that he was going to be able to provide a little something. He wasn't going to be the Marcus Peters of old, vintage Marcus Peters, right? But you could see that the effort wasn't there, and AP got on one time, didn't work. They were about to release him following the Lions game. They gave him an opportunity, took him in the office, sat him down, and said, hey, that won't work anymore. And then when he did it again out there on the field, AP sat him down. Hey, man, come on, stand over here by me. And then they released him the next day, right? That's accountability. If you don't want to do what the rest of your band of brothers are doing out there, we'll find someone else that can. And they did, right? Who did they go and get before they moved on from Marcus Peters? They went and got Jack Jones. They picked him up off of waivers, right? He knew Jack Jones. So he went to the team, hey, go get that guy. I can hold him. I can hug on him. I can love him up. I can coach him up. That guy could be a hell of a player. And they got him. And it paid some good dividends for the Raiders. Multiple interceptions, multiple pick sixes, a hell of a play that he made at the end of the game against Denver, knocking that ball away. I mean, he just brought a different vibe, energy, edge to that cornerback room, right? He made all those guys play with a little bit more edge once he got there. Right, he had that swagger and that confidence, and oh, by the way, he's a hell of a football player. The guy has so much intelligence when it comes to football. Like Nate Hobbs said, man, I ain't never seen a guy that watches as much film as Jack Jones, right? And so even though he may look one way and sound one way, the dude's a student of the game. And oh, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, the Raiders stole Jack Jones. What do I mean by that? I heard people say, well, just give Jack Jones a contract extension and then keep him around for a long time. You don't need to give him a contract extension right now. 2024, his salary, $985,000. 2025, $1.1 million, which you probably have to negotiate before that. You probably don't want it, if he plays really well in 2024, you probably don't want him to go into 2025 in a lame duck year as last year of the season. You probably have to negotiate, but look what you're negotiating from. $985,000, that's nothing. That's chump change in the NFL. $1.1 million, again, chump change in the NFL. That's Jack Jones' next 2 years' salary. So when I say that they stole him, they stole him. He's a guy who's a playmaker. And they got him for $985,000 for 2024 and $1.1 million in 2025. Discipline. Get back to discipline. The team was the least penalized team in the league. And when they lost They lost because, well, they got penalties, like again, the game against the Colts, where they have 7 penalties for 50-something yards, and the timing of the penalties, like the Jack Jones penalties, the pass interference, which I thought was a terrible call. The offsides call looked to be a terrible call, right? Those are 2 right there that were bad. And there was other calls that were made, and the Raiders were guilty of them, and they got out of their sorts. They got out of being disciplined. They were the least penalized team in the league. Let's not shake a stick at that and act like that's not a big deal. When's the last time the Raiders were the least penalized team ever? Right? I mean, that's massive. How about reviving the locker room? Players were excited to come to work. Players were excited to go to practice. Players were excited to get in the game. Players didn't care if they had to travel. They didn't care that their schedules got changed up, switched up. It was never kind of a routine. They were comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is something that he said he wanted from the jump. I want my players to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. They were. Speaking of players, they developed. Guys got better, made plays, sacks and turnovers, something that they were focusing in on training camp. That increased under his watch. They started making more plays. They started having attention to detail on those plays. That didn't happen on accident. That didn't just happen because, this guy is, wearing black Air Force Ones, right, in a hoodie, and came to work in a 6'4". That didn't happen because of that. That happened because they were teaching these guys the right way. They said they coached them hard during practice. Yeah, they had hard practices, but it all paid off during the games, and they all understood what they were doing, and they believed that their guy AP would run through a wall with them. Not tell them to do it, but run through the wall with them. He had a winning record in 9 games, 5-4, right? And won a game over every team in the division, including Kansas City in Kansas City. When's the last time a Raiders coach did that? Right? I mean, Josh McDaniels, took on Kansas City 3 times, was 0-3? Right? I mean, it's just, or he's 0-2. Yeah, he was 0-2. That's right, because they played him twice late in the season. So, yeah, he was 0-2 against Kansas City. So there's that. Coach Pierce got him the second time in Kansas City on Christmas morning when they had an opportunity to win their division, had an opportunity to still be a number 1 seed. Now they're going to be playing this weekend. Yeah, they're playing this one at home. They win this one, I think they will. They're going on the road, right? They're not a number 1 seed. The Raiders ruined their season and their plans just by winning on Christmas. Oh, by the way, he worked with someone else's groceries. He did the best with what he had, including a rookie quarterback that he named the starter the day he took over, November 1st, and rocked with him the whole time, even though I thought, hey, the Minnesota game probably should have made the decision to go to Jimmy G. He stuck with O'Connell. He showed the confidence in him, and O'Connell continued to get better. Right? I think he had his best game as a player that last game of the season. I thought he played really well. And the last handful of games didn't turn the ball over. Right? So he continued to develop. I still don't think he's, the future quarterback of the Raiders, or at least he should be in a competition, but he developed. He got better. I mentioned stole Jack Jones already. Did that. And that's just a handful of things. Not to mention brought the confidence, swagger back to the team, brought the excitement and energy back to the fan base, brought the energy and excitement into the building, right? I mean, just really made them a relevant team again, where there's folks talking about Antonio Pierce. There's folks talking about the Raiders. He did a lot as far as I'm concerned, besides being from Compton, listening to NWA, having a couple, diamond earrings, having that Oakland Coliseum feel to him, right? Yelling out Raiders in the media room or in the locker room after a win. All of that. He did a lot more than just that. That's the fun stuff. That's the stuff that he's letting us see. But in the background, he's coaching his tail off. And he did it in high school, coached up his team really well, did it in college, as a linebackers coach, then a defensive coordinator, and has been in the NFL. So he earned his way. He worked his way up. It wasn't like he was just given an opportunity just because, oh, well, you used to play, so you go coach. That's not how it happened. Do a little bit of research and realize the steps that he took. And as TJ Houshmandzadeh said, if you can lead, you can lead. It doesn't matter if it's high school, college, or the NFL. If you can lead, you can lead. That's all I got for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 3, calls and text straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. And we'll get into that after I tell you about Jase Medical and the Jase case, which is the title sponsor of today's show. And I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities of real life, but we could talk for a minute about preparing for real life, right? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade, which is very, very scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if a loved one needs something and they can't get something, right? The supply chain issue is keeping them from the life-saving medication that they need. Well, thankfully, we'll be all right because of the Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, UTIs, respiratory infections, skin infections, among others. And the stuff could happen to anybody. Visit jasemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medication will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jasemedical.com, use the offer code LOCKEDON, it's all one word, to get $20 off your order. Here we go, Raider Nation, segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to get in your calls and text. Draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Went a little long there in segment 1 and 2, so I'll have to cut this one a little shorter, which I was trying to squeeze in as many as possible, but let's go ahead and jump right into it. Got a text from David in Florida. It says, hey, Q, first time texting. This is David from Florida. By far my favorite show for Raider News. My question to you is, what do you think the chances are we hire Harbaugh and keep AP as defensive coordinator and assistant coach? A lot of people forget that when Harbaugh was hired with the Niners, he kept the interim head coach, Jim Tomsula, on the staff because he was a good coach. So Jim is willing to work together for a common goal. I think a Harbaugh offense with the AP defense would be a great situation. Thanks, Q. Keep doing what you're doing. That's from David in Florida. And, yeah, Harbaugh did do that. I would be shocked. I guess I'm not going to say it wouldn't happen. I would be shocked, and this is why. Because I think that AP realizes he has an opportunity to be the head coach, and I think he wants to be the head coach. And I can only use myself as an example from things that I've been in, situations I've been in. When I was in Central Texas at ESPN Central Texas, my program director, David Smoke, was let go. And so my owner of the radio station put me in charge. He said, all right, you're the program director. You're taking over. You're in charge. Okay, cool. No problem. So I held it down for, 6-7 months at that spot. Radio station did really well. Everybody was happy. Then he decided to bring in this other guy that wasn't very good. And he said, all right, I'm going to hire this guy to be the program director, but you could be his assistant program director. So it's going back to kind of what you're talking about, Jim Harbaugh keeping Jim Tomsula on the staff because he's a really good coach. Well, that guy, yeah, he was cool with me being the assistant program director, but he wasn't really cool with me being the assistant program director because he knows that everyone in the building had my back, except for the one that mattered, which was the owner. Right? I mean, everyone was like, oh, Q's the man, Q's the man, Q's the man. So I could see that situation being the same if Harbaugh were to be hired and AP stays on as like a defensive coordinator and assistant head coach or something like that. I could see a lot of the players saying, yeah, but, this is really AP's team. AP's really my guy. Even though I don't think that they'd have a problem with Jim Harbaugh, at least early. I know he rubs on people after a while, but I think that they would, feel some kind of way. But they also probably would say, you know what, he deserves to be the head coach, not the assistant head coach. So that might be something. And then on top of that, I know, again, in my example, I didn't want to be his assistant because I had already been there, done that. I had already been a program director. Now I've already got a taste of it. Why'd I got to be this dude's assistant? What makes him better than me, right? I've been in the trenches. I've been doing it. So I bounced, right? I made it my point that, okay, I'm going to be out of here starting on January 1st. I said, all right, January 1st, 2021, by June 1st, I'm going to be in Las Vegas. I got hired in Las Vegas in June 11th. So I was 11 days off. But I made it my mission that I was going to get up out of there because, again, why I got to be this guy's assistant? If anything, he should be mine. I've been the guy that's been holding it down. That's not cocky. That's just being confident and honest about the situation. If you're in the trenches, you've done the work, you feel good with what you've proven, and like AP says, your resume is on the grass, why do you need to be someone's assistant? That's just me, especially when you're getting attention from the outside world. Like Tennessee want to interview for the head coach. So obviously somebody's, looking at him. The Giants, if he wants to be a defensive coordinator, he can go back to the team he won a Super Bowl with and be the defensive coordinator. Even though he's a big fan of the Raiders, that's kind of a tough pill to swallow. So I would doubt it. I would highly doubt it that situation would come up and happen. But I guess I could never say never until we see it, right? Because you just never really know. But David, thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. Really good stuff. And I think that was a great question. I really do. Mike in Utah, he's up next. He's calling to ask one question, and he'll explain why, and he'll give his answer as well. Here he is, Mike, calling out of Utah.
Hey, Q, this is Mike from Utah. I have one question for you today, and that question is, do you think this season was successful? Now, I know a lot of folks will say success is based on winning the championship. If that's the case, then there's only one successful team each and every year. And I get that the people that listen to your podcast are more intelligent and are bigger fans than your average fan. If Raider fans are looking for a championship each and every year, then there's a lot of disappointment to go around. That's not the reason that I'm watching the Raiders. And I get that there's a lot of different reasons to watch the Raiders, and everybody wants a championship. But I thought this season was a success. We beat the Broncos twice. That's a successful season in my book. Any season where you lose your head coach on Halloween and then have your interim head coach cheered as he runs off the field is a successful season. The only way this season will be unsuccessful is if we rebuild and start over with a brand new head coach. And I think Mark Davis knows that. And I think he is going to hire AP as he should. And once that is said and done, I'm really looking forward to seeing who AP brings in. And I'm looking forward to the conversation changing to which coaches is AP going to hire and what roster moves is he going to make. That's all I got for you today, Q. I appreciate the podcast. You do great work, and look forward to your answer to my question. Thanks.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. It's a good question. And, you know, half the fan base, maybe more, will say no because there were no playoffs, right? I mean, at the end of the day, was the season a success? No, because they didn't make the playoffs. So say, well, no, they, had less than a 500 record. No, it couldn't have been. There was no playoff run. It's been too far. Right. I get all that. Right. And there's no, everyone gets a trophy. I don't believe in participation trophies and, rainbows and puppy dogs and all that. I'm not about that life. I want this team to win. It's been too long since they have been winning. So anyone who says, no, the season wasn't a success, I get that. Matter of fact, I believe Max Crosby in the locker room said the season wasn't a success because they didn't go to the playoffs. So I get that. But as I rolled out in segment number 2 about what Antonio Pierce was able to do, I think that there was a lot of successful things that happened, right? I'm not saying that the whole season was a success because, again, the ultimate goal was not achieved. The Raiders want to be playing this weekend for Super Wildcard Weekend. They're not, right? And they missed a couple opportunities on their watch, on his watch. Minnesota and the Colts, I say, are 2 games right there that the Raiders definitely should have won. I mean, they easily, to be honest about the situation, they could have finished out the whole season on a winning streak. Coming out of the bye week, they very easily could have won every single game. Coming out of the bye week, they lost to Minnesota. Then they turned it around 4 days later and beat the Chargers. Then they turned it around and beat the Chiefs. They could have beat the Colts. I think that they should have beat the Colts. And then they could have finished things off by playing the Broncos the way that they did. So, I mean, they easily could have ended the season on a 5-game winning streak. Then we're talking about something different. But, I do think that there was a lot of positives to take away from the season. I thought a lot of players developed. I thought a lot of players showed what they could be. I think guys like Amik Robertson earned a contract. He showed who he could be. I think getting Jack Jones, as I mentioned, was a big positive. Trayvon Merrick developed, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that I could take away from the season that were positive. Plus, I saw that the Raiders defense really could be something. Malcolm Kuntz developed. I saw that the Raiders could all of a sudden have, a Robin to Max Crosby's Batman. So those are all positives. It's not the ultimate positive. It's not the ultimate success, but there were successful things that happened throughout the season. Mike, thanks for the call, man. Really good stuff. I got a text from Tadreese in New Jersey. He says, hey, Q. Tadreese from New Jersey. Bro, I texted a few weeks ago about a national media person talking about not buying into the hype of Coach Pierce and how the Raiders need to hire an offensive-minded coach. Then after we beat KC, you had Pierce interview, and I was fired up as he asked the question, when was the last time we beat them? And what kind of coaches did we have? Gurus, right? I'm not supposed to be the one to beat them. Q, after Tuesday's show, I agree with you to your gut feeling to go with your gut. This feels right, and he's right here. Another team he'd be amazing at if they let go of Dayball would be the Giants. Do we not think he'd fire up New York to run through a wall, those players in New York to run through a wall for him? I'd rather not see him coaching any other team than the one we have right in our building. I believe that AP is committed to excellence. Just win, baby. That's Tadreese in New Jersey. And, yeah, I mean, the Raiders would obviously be option A. The Raiders would be an awesome landing place for AP. I think that everything that you said is spot on. I loved it when he said that, the Raiders had gurus talking about the offensive guys like John Gruden and Josh McDaniels, the guys that are able to push all the right buttons, and instead a defensive-minded coach with not a lot of NFL experience as far as a head coach went into KC and got the dub, right? And really, they went in there and expected to win. They went in there and they bullied Kansas City. And I don't care if Kansas City's down or not, they're still Kansas City. And they're playing this weekend, Super Wild Card weekend. But the Raiders went in there on Christmas and stole their Christmas gifts. They were the ultimate Grinch. So, yeah, and if not the Raiders, then I could definitely see the Giants, right? I mean, that's the team he won a Super Bowl with. They're already interested in him as a defensive coordinator. I could see him getting in there as a DC, and, you know, if things didn't go right with Dayball, I could see them moving him up to the head coaching position and him thriving there. Again, I talked to Patricia Traynor from Locked On Giants, on my radio show, and she's like, man, they love AP here. And none of what she saw from Antonio Pierce with the Raiders surprised her. She's like, yeah, Q, that's who he is. That's why he was on a team, and he was the captain on the field with guys like Michael Strahan, right, who's a Hall of Famer. He might not have been the Hall of Fame player, but he was the coach on the field. He was the leader on the field. He was the guy that everyone followed. I think that's okay. I think that's really good, as a matter of fact. So there's that. Thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. We got time for one more call. We'll take it from the 5 and Dime, the 510. No name on it, but that's okay. He's calling to talk about the head coaching position. And as many people believe, it comes down to Antonio Pierce or Jim Harbaugh, and talks about who he prefers and why. Here it is, a call from the 510.
Yo, what's going on, Q? I don't know if this is the correct number to reach out, but listening to your podcast here, man, and how everybody's gravitating and pushing for AP to be the head coach, man. Based off what he has done last year, everything is great. The team looked a lot better. They played a lot more freely. But I'm gonna be honest with you, man. I'm more leaning towards Harbaugh or maybe another head coach, man, because AP he's so limited in experience, man, that I don't feel that I'm willing to put all my eggs in that basket and give me another 1 year, 2 years of a mediocre regular team or season, man. I'm tired of losing. Me personally, I don't know about the rest of Raider Nation, man, but I'm tired of losing. I'm tired of losing. I want to make a big splash and a big change and make a move, make something happen, dramatic happen. Everybody kept pushing for the Raiders to keep winning. Well, they kept winning, but look what happened. Now we're in the middle of the pack in the draft order. We're not going to be able to get like a top 3, top 4 quarterback unless we trade a whole farm and try to land a top 5 pick. It's the same thing over and over every single year. The Raiders end up being in the middle pack of the draft, and we can't land a top-notch quarterback. Maybe an option for us could be a Kirk Cousins if he's let go on free agency. But AP, man, like I said, it's just his experience that kind of has me off a little bit. Now, if he doesn't do well next year, what's the whole Raider Nation going to be saying? Oh, we should have went after Harbaugh. We should have went after somebody with experience. But at the end of the day, man, if that happens, honestly, I'm going to be pointing the finger at everybody that pushed for AP. I don't know about you, but I feel a lot more comfortable with somebody like Harbaugh, who has a lot more experience, shows he's a winner at the elite leadership level. I don't know. That's just me, man. But hopefully this voicemail here, this message gets some play, and I'm reaching out to the correct number. All right, Q. Good job on your podcast. We'll keep listening. Late.
Thank you for the call. I appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, you're spot on when it comes to experience and proven guy. Harbaugh is definitely that dude. His resume speaks for itself. He doesn't have to explain his resume. Matter of fact, he didn't even have to sit his resume on your desk. You just kind of know what it is. He's one of those guys, right? He's not one of those guys that applies for a job. He's one of those guys that the job calls him. That's who he is. There's no doubt. You're spot on. Now, to go with that, he's going to want more money than God, and he's going to want more power than God, right? Which is obviously impossible. But he's going to want, a big fat contract, like 10 years, $125 million. That's the offer he has on the table from Michigan. Gruden was, reported to have the 10-year, $100 million contract. And the first time that he was flirting with the Raiders, that's what he wanted. Mark Davis was like, no, I don't want to give up that kind of a deal again. You think he learned from that? That was smart. That's what Harbaugh's going to want. He's going to want that kind of a deal. And hell, after Nick Saban retired, which he retired on Wednesday, he don't never have to leave college, right? He's the most powerful coach in college now that Nick Saban's gone. I know Kirby Smart's there, but Kirby Smart hasn't got the I don't want to say resume. He's got a resume, but he doesn't have kind of the style and he's not the character and the big personality that Jim Harbaugh is. So Harbaugh could really thrive in college forever if he wants to. I think he has an itch to scratch to getting back to the NFL. But, again, I think both coaches could be really good. And if you tell me that when training camp opens, they're going to either have Antonio Pierce as the head coach or Jim Harbaugh as the head coach, I don't think that's a bad thing for either one of them. Again, two things could be, the true. I just think that the power that Harbaugh is going to want, and I think the Raiders have been there, done that already, with the head coach having more power than the GM and him basically hiring the GM, hiring his own boss. I don't think that's a good idea. And the money that he's going to want, and the fact that he wears on players after a while, all are factors. And I think that Antonio Pierce could be a really good coach. I think he's already a good coach, and he's just going to continue to grow. Time on task, right? Resumes on the grass. His worst day was his first day. Just all that good stuff. I think that they have an opportunity to build this story within the organization. And AB could be the next great Raider head coach. I think it's a possibility, but only time will tell what's going to happen. Thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Still got a text from Raider Al in Georgia. Got a text from David in the 209. Vader Raider in the 303. Hit us up with a call. We'll get all that on tomorrow's show, plus more. We'll have more news and notes. We'll have more conversation. And, who knows what direction we'll go. Who knows what we'll be finding out about. But we'll close out the week really strong here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.